The Pittsburgh Pirates have made me sick. No, really, I'm like actually sick. Are the Pirates in trouble? Where will the innings pitched come from? And how do they snap out of it? We'll talk all about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, brought to you by eBay Motors.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody, here on Thursday, June 15th. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where the Pirates make me lose sleep at night and apparently make me sick when they lose. We'll just start with that. Again, you guys heard that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors as well as Bird Dogs. More on them later. And hi, Craig. Craig Toth is here on Thursday, as he always is. And I was in a space last night with some of you guys who kind of heard the NyQuil Ethan voice. So it sounds a little better today, but the coughing and sniffling is there. And coughing and sniffling, I guess, could just be what you want to call this Pirates team right now. I don't even know, Craig. If you looked at the box score yesterday, just the box score, and I know that's not what this podcast is about. This is a local show. By the way, something I do want to say before we start, just know that you're getting this content all the time. Meanwhile, The Athletic is throwing away local content. So just know that I'm still here. If you need local content on this team, I'm right here. Even though I don't live in Pittsburgh, you're still going to get that content every day. But if you look at the box score last night, Craig, we had probably the weirdest moment of the year yesterday, where Austin Hedges bat flipped the Chicago Cubs. And it was awesome. It was great to see him finally get one. So you look at that. Austin Hedges hits a home run. McCutchen has an RBI. Carlos Santana, 4 RBIs. Brian Reynolds was 3 for 5 in this game. And the Pirates lost. If I would have told you that all of that would have happened last night, would you have thought the Pirates would have lost that game? Probably not, right? After the 5th inning of yesterday's game, specifically the 6th inning, Rowanzi comes into the 5th inning after a good outing from Osvaldo Bido in his debut. He only goes 4, though. I still call it a good outing. He was striking guys out, throwing the ball in the zone, limiting base runners, doing everything he could. Rowanzi comes in the 5th, and he looks like his old self for a second. I was like, okay, he's doing okay here. Honestly, I think that's where it should have stopped. I think the 5th inning should have just been where it stopped. Derek Shelton let him go too far, I think, and definitely once it got to the point of him giving up all those runs, he definitely let him go a batter too far. And the Cubs score 6 runs in the 6th inning, and the game just completely flipped on its head. They now lose the first 2 of this series. And don't look now, everybody, but the Pirates only have a 4.5 game lead on the Cubs, a 1.5 game lead on the Brewers, or not the Brewers, the Reds, and a 1 game lead on the Brewers. So what do we make of all this, Craig? I don't know what to make of what I watched last night.
I mean, you're watching 2 teams in a struggling division, and you're looking at a team that, I mean, I know I looked this up again. It's, the bullpen has, I think they're like number 26th in innings pitched. It's not like they're being, overused, overexposed, but I think we are seeing maybe the bullpen that we were worried about prior to, the offseason and the regular season starting. I mean, especially with, Harley Garcia still, I mean, I don't know if that guy can hold a ball yet. Calling up, players like Rob Zastrisny, getting, Chase D. Young in there twice. Johan Ramirez has shown flashes last season and this season. Even everybody's favorite reliever in Money Moretta, I looked up over his last, I think it's like 7 appearances, has a 1.30 whip. And for people that don't know, I talk about this all the time. Walks and hits per innings pitched. You put guys on base, and bad things will start to happen. For relievers, anything below usually like a 1.15 is in that, good. Anything below a 1 is getting into that elite level. Right now, David Bednar is in the elite. Moretta still, is in the very good, but things have not been great. Colin Holderman, even the past like month, he's been getting lucky to a degree, and stuff is just kind of starting to catch up with him. But like you said, Beto goes 4 innings, threw a lot of pitches. If he gets that to stretch out to 5 or 6, maybe we're not in, the same place we were last night. Rowanzi, at this point in time, you could kind of say, he maybe shouldn't have gone out. Hindsight's, I always say it's 2040. It's better than 2020. It's 2040. And he maybe shouldn't have gone out for that. But there wasn't really any inkling that he was going to pitch as poorly as he did in that inning. But also, a lot of that is singles, but the other part is walks. Walks, they kind of kill this team. You put guys on base, you're going to give up some runs. So I don't know with Rowanzi. You're hoping that even if you put him in the relief role, that you can get 2 innings out of him, especially with, you're looking at your headline here for the people that are on YouTube or wherever you're watching it at, where did the innings pitched come from? You're hoping you can get at least 2 out of him if you are only getting 4 from your starter, but you really can't count on that right now. Seeing Kyle Nicholas moved up to AAA, a lot of people thought it possibly could have been Jared Jones. Everybody's looking for when Quinn Priester is going to come, but I could kind of see it maybe being Nicholas at this point in time. Hasn't pitched, outstanding in Altoona, but has come on as of late. A guy that I thought, maybe should have been in the AAA rotation from the start of the season. But I think Gary on your show on Monday, Gary Morgan, had said this and has been saying this for a while. We're one Rich Hill blister away from, this season, possibly imploding, even more than it has. Good news. We are in a weak division, and, the Reds have come on fairly strong here. I don't really believe in the Reds pitching at this point in time. Nick Lodolo, you got Ashcraft on the IL. Like, they are one May pitching for the Pirates away from, hitting a skid as well. They're on a hot streak right now. Man, 82 wins at this point in time, I'm looking at it, could possibly win this division. So, yeah, these games are extremely frustrating, especially, the one last night. You're up 5-1. And I hate to say it, I got like a calm feeling, and I was like, okay, maybe we're going to take this one going up against, tough, Marcus Stroman today, Ethan's, favorite pitcher for the Cubs, laugh out loud, JK, whatever the kids say nowadays. But yeah, it's not looking good. And especially on a day where, I know, Ethan, in your episodes, we talked about, the record with the Pirates when they score more than, 4 runs. That should be enough for a team. You should lock that down. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, there was a lot of naysayers out there thinking that, Beto was going to come out and implode and we'd be down, 5-1 at that point in time in the game. And when you're not, if you want to be a competitive team, that's the type of game last night that you have to put away, and you can't just let the team, keep chipping away. Eventually you're down. Even the team even fought back. They even got the 6th run, So yeah, it's just that's one of the the more disappointing losses that I've watched so far this season. And I know people would kind of go back to maybe like the Rays series or a complete blowout game or something. But no, like to me, you're up against a division rival, 5-1 through 5 innings. Like that game should be on lockdown. And this game shouldn't even be in question. I mean, we should be looking at a 2-game lead over the Brewers, who I believe still at this point in time are a better team than the Reds. And whatever it would be, a 2-game lead over or 2.5-game lead over the Reds. We should be sitting here. Ethan, you might still be sick, but you would at least have, some positive overtones to your sickness. And now you probably just want to go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah. And I'll kind of give my 2 cents on some other things that I saw last night. But before we do that, I know it's hard to watch this Pirates team and be comfortable, but if you want to try, wear bird dogs. Bird dogs are awesome. They make you look good. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. And Bird Dogs fixed the issue of stiff, restricting cotton by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you can get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat as well, wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. So again, everything you said is pretty much what I would echo here. But then you go back and look at this game again, and it was 5-1 in the 5th inning. At the end of the 5th inning. Where was this game played last night, Craig?
The friendly confines of Wrigley Field on the north side of Chicago.
Yeah, they were not so friendly to the Pirates at all. But especially when you were up on a team on the road. And I will say the same thing on tomorrow's show when they enter this series against Milwaukee in Milwaukee, and that whatever you want to call it. Because we've had our nightmares there too. But they said a baffling stat on the broadcast last night that I never knew, that I will, anytime they play at Wrigley, I will think of now, is ever since the Pittsburgh Pirates have acquired Brian Reynolds and put him on the Major League roster, they are 5-23 at Wrigley Field. 5-23. That is unacceptable. Now, obviously, look at the teams that Brian Reynolds has been on since he has been a Pittsburgh Pirate, and this is arguably the first year where they are a competitive team. So obviously that stat can be a little inflated. But last night was one of those games that I think come August, August, we'll look back on that game and say, wow, we're like a game behind the Brewers or the Reds or whoever. We could be tied with them right now if it wasn't for that game. And you also already looked at the headline that I have up on YouTube, is where will all these innings pitched come from? Right now, Mitch Keller obviously is your most consistent guy. You know he's going to give you 6 innings. Fine. Johan Oviedo, I believe, is up there in innings pitched in all of Major League Baseball. He's going to give you stuff like that. Rich Hill is fine for now, but as, again, you alluded to, the guy is 43 years old. He can't do this all year. Then you have Luis Ortiz, who I think is going to be okay. And then Osvaldo Bido, who pitched fine yesterday. But what do you really do with the back end of the rotation now? I mean, I think it's, at this point, obviously it's going to be hard to determine who it is right now because it is only June 15th. So we still have 45 games in between now and then. But even if the Pirates aren't in contention at the end of July, which would be very hard to do, by the way, in this division, Craig, you can make the real argument that they're going to have to trade for not 1, but 2 starters. You can make that argument for this team, and it's not going to be guys like Dylan Cease or Michael Lorenzen or Shohei Ohtani or any of these guys would be like, whoa, or Shane Bieber. It's going to be these guys that are going to go in there and at least give you 5 innings and get this team back on their feet. But can they afford to wait that long? And nobody's trading starting pitching right now because everybody's pretty much in contention except the Oakland Athletics and the Kansas City Royals. Yeah, you heard what I said too, right? The St. Louis Cardinals are only 8 games back. They are still there, even after their crazy skid of like 13 out of 17 lost. So what do they do in between that time? I mean, you mentioned Quinn Priester. Obviously, Craig, you're the prospect guy. You know this probably better than I do. I just still don't think Quinn Priester is ready yet. And I know that people want to see him. Same thing with Kyle Nicholas, Jared Jones. I would love to see those guys come up here. But right now, it's not the time to experiment. But they might not have a choice. I think that's the scariest part of this is Quinn Priester to me is not a MLB pitcher just yet. But as you mentioned earlier, if Rich Hill goes down with an injury for like 2 weeks, who else do you call up? That's the biggest question I think I have here is who else do you call up at that point?
I mean, you got Cam Allred, who's been stretched out a little bit. It could be, I don't know, Carmen Majinski, who I understood the thinking, back in the offseason of transferring him into the bullpen, but it's not like he pitched poorly as a starter in Altoona last year. And when you draft a guy, as high as you did in the first round, comp round A, to make that move so quickly, like I understood it with Cody Bolton. Like Cody Bolton had his injuries, it made sense for him, but for Majinski, I mean, he definitely has the stuff of a reliever, but I mean, so does pretty much anybody on the major league roster. If you ask them to throw their 2 best pitches, I mean, not Roansy Contreras at this point, unfortunately, but most guys, could be able to do that. So, and the one thing that you said with a Johan Oviedo, I just looked back. I was looking right now because I was wondering where he was at. He's at over 70 innings pitched, and that's the most innings that he's pitched pretty much since 2019 when he was a starter, like a full-time starter within St. Louis's system. So, I mean, I know that he's probably stretched out, but I mean, we've been monitoring innings here. I mean, unfortunately, at this point in time, I mean, I know it's 2023, but it's still maybe not past the point where we're done talking about, the effects of the pandemic, shortened season just yet. I mean, especially for a guy that, coming into the season, it looked like, if JT Brubaker wasn't injured, that he would have started in the bullpen. So, how many innings did, Ben Cherington have, maybe written down on a Post-it note for Johan Oviedo? Well, that number keeps going up and up. Like I said, Luis Ortiz is going to have to, pitch more innings. Rich Hill is going to have to pitch. I think it was Alex Stumpf maybe from DK that had said something about, Rich Hill not pitching, over 150 innings, maybe like twice in his career or something, where you're going to be asking that from a guy who now noticeably has a brace on his knee. And, like I said, he's always gotten blisters. He's gone on the 15-day IL, I think. I don't know how many in the past years, just because of, he throws a curveball constantly and from different angles and stuff. I mean, he ends up getting blisters. So, I mean, I think we are going to see Quinn here at some point in time. I think that because of that move of Nicholas up to AAA, he may be, waiting in the wings at this point in time. But I mean, we're going to probably see guys that, we didn't want to see. A question I had was recently, Zach Plesac from the Guardians was placed on waivers, made it through, but I just checked and he was put on the developmental list down in AAA. So there might be something more going on with that because The Pirates have taken, waivers on guys with track records nowhere near of what Plesac has had. He's having a horrible year this year. ERA up over 7, WHIP, reaching almost 2.00. So maybe there was something else there. Maybe they did make the call on that. Just because, when you have Vince Velasquez, who you were looking for innings from, JT Brubaker, who you were looking for innings from, Michael Burrows, who you were looking for innings from at some point in time during the season. I still think they shop, Rich Hill to a degree here. But do you just kind of keep him around just because you need those innings and you don't know where they're going to come from? And I do agree with you, Ethan, that, I've talked about for a while here that I was hoping that they would be buyers and sellers at this point in time, in the rebuild. And I think they almost have to be. They have to be looking at, teams that are falling out of contention very quickly. The Kansas City Royals is a name that comes to mind. Obviously their pitching staff isn't great, but they do have guys that can eat innings, which is what you're going to need, because if the bullpen is performing poorly at this point in time, imagine what's going to look like when you're looking for a possible bullpen game, as the fifth man in the rotation, or even sixth man in the rotation. The schedule, the baseball scheduling gods have not been kind to us this year, and they haven't been kind to other teams as well. I don't want to say that either, because when we played St. Louis, not too long ago here, they did have 2 days off in a row because of a rescheduling thing where they ended up playing on Memorial Day. But prior to that, I think they were at like 19 games in a row or something like that. So, it's just very weird that we keep on getting like every Thursday off in a row. And now, we don't have a Thursday off, for a few weeks here, and we got to play 17 games in a row. It's definitely going to be a tough thing. So I don't know. The innings pitched are going to come from places I think that, we can predict in a Priester, in an Allred, in probably a Kyle Nicholas. I'm not going as far down as Jared Jones just yet. I'm thinking they're, not moving him up to AAA and having Nicholas come up kind of shows that they want to just let him, develop as a starting pitcher. He did have a short, IL stint at the beginning of the season, is kind of coming back from that and is building back up. Last night didn't have, too much of a lights out inning there. I don't even think he made it through 4 innings. I'd have to go back and look at it. I was watching that game kind of on 1.5 speed while watching the Pirates game and different stuff. But, he threw a lot of pitches, didn't get through as much as they would want to see him. But I think they just want to take their time with him and just make sure he develops and polishes himself, because he will, be fairly important, next year, because, Chris and I, this week, we were talking about on the Bucks in the Basement, our regular show, we're talking about, pitching for next year, hoping that Quinn Priester starts out the year as, hopefully, I hate to give people numbers, but one of your 5. And then, Jared Jones would be in the mix there at some point in time. But we're looking at, if you don't get 2 of Rowanzi, Oviedo, and Ortiz, then once again, you're looking for 2 starting pitchers, just like you were looking for 2 starting pitchers again this year. That's why an injury to, a JT Brubaker or especially a Michael Burrows, who probably would have been up at this point in time, it is so, crucial. We see it, rebuilds like these or, similar to these are thrown off kilter. Gary on Monday pointed out the Tigers rebuild. You're looking at a team, in the Royals who were kind of one of the main reasons why Dennis Eckersley used the hodgepodge of nothingness moniker for the Pirates because of what the Royals were doing there. Well, I mean, the Royals, you got Bobby Witt Jr., MJ Melendez. I think Pastino just is going on the IL now. But their pitching that they had been counting on and had been developing and thinking that they could, I mean, because the Royals have done a fairly good job of finding, veteran pitchers in the same way the Pirates have. But if that young pitching that, you're kind of counting on doesn't develop, then it goes sideways really quickly. And with injuries and stuff, I mean, right now, before it's like, you're hoping for one of a Priester, a Nicholas, a Burrows. And now, I mean, you're pretty much, you have to have one of those guys. Before you were hoping, and now it's a must, because at one point in time, the bats were in the rebuild were ahead of the pitching. Then the pitching was ahead of the bats with, Ortiz and Oviedo and Priester. And now it's kind of like a wash. We do have some hitters that are continuing to hit well. Henry Davis. I'm wondering, and I'm just going to kind of throw this out there. I know Gary had put out the 19th as the potential call up for Endy. I think on your show last week, I put out the 27th, but is it Henry? Maybe at this point in time. I know his catching is behind Endy's, but I mean, if you're going for guys that are on a hot streak, I had spoken about this on Minor League News and Brews, the second podcast that comes out every Saturday morning from me, just talking about the minor leagues. I mean, in watching Endy, he's during that hot streak, he had maybe like 2 good hits. I mean, if you actually watch the games, you can't be a stat line, fan. A 4-for-5 game from him wasn't a 4-for-5 game. It was guys that are misplaying balls and bloop singles. And so, I mean, he is coming along a little bit, but I'm pretty sure last night it was another 0-for-4 night with a couple strikeouts, which is what we've seen from Endy more this season than we've seen the hot streak. So, I mean, I'm wondering if you're looking for bats and you can maybe just have Henry in there one day a week but then, I mean, Connor Joe hit pretty well last night. Josh Palacios is hitting fairly well. So where do the at-bats come in right field? I mean, are you going to take McCutchen out of the lineup in DH? Because he's pretty much been your most consistent hitter. May not have been, I'm not going to say best hitter for the season, but a guy that will give you the most consistent at-bats, drawing walks, getting hits, timely hits. So, I mean, I don't know what you even do there. So, I mean, that's where it's like, are the Pirates in trouble? If anybody's watching, where the innings pitch come from? How do they snap out of it? I mean, at this point in time, they need, number one, starting today, I mean, they need Oviedo to take the ball and do what he did. What was it this past Sunday, even though it resulted in a loss, is just to go out there and shove and hope that the bats continue. And I mean, they can do it against I mean, I know Stroman, that's like the toughest part of the Cubs, but if you can get Stroman out of there, it's not like the Cubs bullpen is scary. I mean, it's been scary to the Pirates last night, but it's not a great pitching staff. So, I mean, that's kind of where it starts, is you need somebody to go out there and shove for, 7+ innings and give your team a chance to win the game. So, I mean, it's going to go on the shoulders of Oviedo, of Ortiz, of Hill, of Keller. I mean, they're going to have to be the guys. That's what's going to keep this going during the season. I mean, I look back to the Baltimore Orioles of last season. If they even had somewhat of a semblance of a pitching staff last year, I mean, that team would have been scary. And we're seeing that this season, where the young arms are kind of coming along with, what the Pirates do of one veteran kind of plugged in there in Kyle Gibson to steady the rotation. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, you may not. I mean, if you can't hit, it may not. It could lose you games. But if you're not pitching, you're definitely going to lose games, man. I mean, that's just kind of what we're seeing here at this point in time in the season.
Yeah, and I mean, it remains to be seen on what the Pirates are going to do here. It really is. I don't know what the plan is, and I don't even know if the Pirates know what the plan is, because that whole plan, just rip it apart. Bye. Like everything that they had planned this year, even from day one, has not day one, but O'Neal Cruz's injury early in the year definitely kind of threw things off too. Craig, of course, you could find his stuff at Inside the Bucks Basement. You can find my stuff, of course, on Twitter at Locked On Pirates or at MVP_Ethan. I will have another game recap on Inside the Bucks Basement tonight about this game. And just remember, kids, I don't like Marcus Stroman at all. So just be prepared for chaos if the Pirates lose tonight. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. My name is Ethan Smith. That's Craig Toth. We will see you on the flip side.